I like it when you just have to lie. I like it when you just have to lie. No. Hi, this is Ambi from Board Game Blitz, and today I'm going to be telling you about all the games I played in June. So in June I played 25 different games, and I'm going to try to go through them quickly here so this video isn't too long. This is my first time doing one of these, so I'm not really sure what order to go in. I guess I could do alphabetical, I think people do that, or I think I'm going to try going from most plays to least plays, because that's how both BGG and Board Game Stats sorts it when I look at my log plays for June. Also, I started thinking about trying to take pictures of games as I was playing them, but I always forget. So some of these games will have pictures and some of them won't. I'm sorry about that. But first, I played Cross Clues 12 times. So Cross Clues is a cooperative word party game. So if you like games like Codenames, Decrypto, Just One, games like that, Cross Clues is a real-time cooperative word game where there's a grid of a 5x, or like, depends on what difficulty you're playing it, but we play with a 5x5 grid of words, and so it's like A through E, 1 through 5, and each person gets a card like A1 or B3, and you're trying to give a clue for the intersection of those two words. And you're doing this all real time, so everyone's giving a clue while trying to guess other people's clues too, and you're trying to get as many possible as you can. You only get one guess too, so there's a timer, and I really like real-time, hectic word games. I mean, I like those individually, real-time games, word games, party games. So Cross Clues has been our go-to game for a while now. All right, next is My First Adventure, Finding the Dragon, which I talked about in my news update vlog thing a lot, but it's a RPG storybook game, choose your own adventure type game for toddlers. So for ages 3+, I was able to play it with my kids 5 times, and I just got it a few days ago, so they really like it. But it's basically similar to a choose your own adventure. It's a very light introduction to role-playing. You get to pick a character, and then you pick out of 3 options at each section of the story, and they can just like point to what they want to do because it's like a section of the page, and then you turn and say what happens, and then you're trying to find a dragon and befriend the dragon. And it's really cute, and they like reading it over and over because it's like reading a book but also a game, so like the best of both worlds. Next is Heyo, which is a really quick game. We played it 4 times, but this is a cooperative rhythm card game. It's by Oink Games, which makes like little small box games from Japan. But you have these cards that have the top and a bottom in different colors, and you're trying to line up all of one color before you score that color. But you're each playing one card at a time, and you have to play it to the beat or else you get penalized. So you can communicate about what cards you have, but you only have like a few seconds before you have to play. So you have to like tell people, whoa, you have to score now or else I'm gonna have to mess up this long run of blue. But like you don't tell them in time to the beat. So it's a lot of fun if you like cooperative card games, and then the rhythm in a board game is very unique. Next is another Oink game, 9 Tiles, which is I think one of my favorite Oink games, maybe my favorite, but it's a speed game. You basically have 9 tiles that are double-sided, and you're trying to match a pattern the fastest, and then you flip them over, put them into this grid, and slap the card when you've gotten it correct. So it's very fast. Speed game. If you like speed games, you should check out 9 Tiles. And I played that 3 times, and then now there's a bunch of games I played twice. So there's Cryptid, which is a deduction game where you're searching for a cryptid. There's a hexagonal grid. So there's like different spaces on the board, forest, swamp, water, and then there's like animal territories, there's structures that are different. And each person has a clue like, oh, the cryptid is within a forest or a swamp, or the cryptid is within one space of a structure or something. So each person has a clue, and those clues together point to one spot. So you're trying to figure out where that spot is first by asking people, can the cryptid be here according to your clue? And then you're trying to figure out what everyone else's clue is and like where that points to. So I really like deduction games, and I think this works really well with like the way you put the pieces on the board to show yes or no. And I hadn't played this game in a while. The last time I played it, it took a while. It can take a while if you're like thinking really hard on your turn trying to figure out everything. But when we played it this month, it was actually pretty quick, and we played it 3 players. So I think at more players, it probably takes longer because you're trying to figure out everyone's thing. But with 3 players, it worked really well. Next is Disney Sorcerer's Arena Epic Alliances core set, which I got as a review copy, and I played it and talked about it on the podcast. But it is a skirmish game where you're Disney characters. So each person, it's a 1 versus 1 or 2 versus 2 battle. And each person gets to pick a few Disney characters. They range from, there's like heroes and villains and some Pixar characters. but you're fighting against each other trying to get victory points. And it's kind of similar to Unmatched if you've played that, but each character has a deck of cards and you use those to like do special attacks and movement and stuff, and you're going around on a board doing the attacks. And if you defeat one of the characters, then they respawn later. You get a bunch of points and they respawn later. So I like the respawning of the characters because it doesn't feel as bad. And yeah, I was actually surprised I enjoyed this one because I didn't enjoy Unmatched as much. But I like Disney too, so that might have helped because it was pretty thematic with the different characters. Next is a game that I hadn't played in like 5 years, but is one of my favorite games. This is the Resistance Avalon. This is a social deduction game that's pretty minimalist. It's a social deduction game like Mafia or Werewolf, but you don't need a narrator. So in the Resistance, you each have a role. There's 2 teams, the good and the bad, and then you don't know who anyone is, although the bad people know each other. And then you're going on quests, and the bad people want to fail 3 out of 5, and the good people want to pass 3 out of 5. And so you're like voting up and down, and then you're getting information based on how the votes are, and like if people go on a quest and fail it, then you'll know that someone was bad there. And in Resistance Avalon, someone on the good team is Merlin and knows who all the bad people are, but they can't be obvious about it because at the end, if the good people win, then the bad people can assassinate Merlin and like guess who it is, and if they guess right, then the bad people win. So I really like the Resistance Avalon. It's my favorite social deduction game. I like it when, if you're bad, you don't have to claim a character and make up a whole backstory about it. You can just say like, oh yeah, I'm good. I just lie straight to the face. That's all I want to do. Not have to like bluff my way out of it. That's what it is. I don't like bluffing as much. I like the deduction part and like straight lying. This makes me sound really bad. But I hadn't played Resistance in 5 years, so I was worried that maybe I don't like it as much anymore. But I played it again and I loved it still, so yeah. It's great. Next is Happy Bunny, which is one of the toddler games. It's a cooperative roll and move game. You move the bunny along a board, land on colored spaces that you roll, and they have numbers, and that's how many carrots you pull out of the board. It has a cool toy factor, and you're trying to end with more carrots that have bite marks on them than non-bite marks, because the non-bite mark ones go to the farmer, and you're the Happy Bunny. So it's really simple, and my kids just started like figuring out how roll and move works, because none of their other games have that. So they had liked playing with the pieces before. The next 2 are also more toddler games. There's Here Fishy Fishy and Hungry as a Bear. Here Fishy Fishy is a fishing game. So you have a magnetic fishing pole and different colored fish. You roll a die and you try to get that color of the fish. And then if you get the color, then you get to put in a puzzle piece on your board. So my kids really like the puzzle pieces, and the magnet fishing thing is really fun to do. And then Hungry as a Bear, the box turns into like a 3D bear thing that you take a spoon with food and put it into the bear's mouth. You basically roll the die, and that's the color that you pick to put in the bear's mouth. So my kids really like that, the theme. They like eating, and they like putting things into the slot. A lot of these toddler games I've talked about in my children's game segments that were on Board Game Breakfast and are also on this channel. So you can check those out if you're interested in those. Okay, on to the games that I've played once. So Atlantis Rising 2nd edition is an older cooperative game that we played. You're trying to survive in Atlantis. Like every turn, a lot of bad things happen. Like, things flood over. So there's action spaces on the board. You send out your workers to the action spaces, and you're trying to collect a bunch of resources in order to build up some temple stuff or something. I don't remember exactly what you're trying to do before the whole island floods. But like the spaces that you go to then can flood. And if they flood, then you can't do the action that you're at. So you can like, the outer spaces are better, but like the inner spaces are more safe. So things are going to be flooding, and then later in the game, you're not going to be able to do as much stuff. So it's pretty hard, and we got pretty bad luck with the card draw. The card draw is how the islands flood and stuff. Like we had to reshuffle things back in, so like a really bad card came up again. And so we did not win that one. Next is Origins First Builders, which is a review copy that I got. And I haven't played it multiplayer yet, but I played it once solo. On stream actually, so you can watch that VOD if you want to. But it's a civilization building type game. Like you're gathering resources and going to spaces to do different actions, but you're placing dice on the spaces to go to them and do their actions. And the spaces that you go to have different values on them, like dice values. So your die has to be equal to or greater than that value. And when you go to it, then you increase the value. So like the next person to go has to have a higher die value to do that action. So that's pretty interesting. And then you're like getting resources, you're building structures in your little you have your only little city of hexes that you're building out, and they do different powers. So there's a lot of stuff going on, a lot of different ways to get points. But I only played it solo, and I want to play it multiplayer in the future when I have the right group. Next is Blood on the Clocktower, which I played before playing the Resistance again. So Blood on the Clocktower is a newer social deduction game that's kind of like Werewolf, so it's more story-based, and there's characters, everyone has a role, and there's a narrator, storyteller that's like giving everyone their role, and the roles do different things, and it gets kind of confusing, like figuring out all the roles. But we played this at, I think, 6 players or 7 players or something, which is, I think it's better at more players, because at more players, the bad people can actually see some roles that aren't in the game and like pretend to claim them. Whereas in our game, we just like, the good people just ended up claiming their roles, and we all had information and kind of figured out who the bad people were on the first round. So that kind of sucked for the bad people, because then they couldn't just like come up with something after we had already claimed. But yeah, it was a lot better than the last time I had played Blood on the Clocktower, which was back in 2017 with like 20 people that I didn't know, and it lasted 3 hours. So it's a lot better with friends and not 20 people. But I still like the Resistance better, and so like when I played the Resistance again later, I had a lot of fun. All right, next is Word Slam, which is a word party game. We do a lot of those, huh? But this is a guessing game, so kind of like a Pictionary type game. But instead of drawing, you have a deck of cards that are different words, and you're just putting those down without talking and trying to get people to guess the thing based on like what words you're putting down to describe it. It can get pretty hard, especially if the words that you're trying to guess are really hard. But it's a fun game if you like those types of like guessing games, Pictionary, charade, concept, games like that. Next is Azul, which I got to play 3 players. It's a tile placement game. You have these tiles and you're trying to put them on your board. You get different points for putting them on, and you're trying to like get columns or rows, and there's different colors of tiles. But the way you get them is there's different piles in the middle of the board, and you pick one of them and have to take all of one color from that pile. And when you place them on your board, there's a left side, and the right side is like your actual grid. The left side has spaces, like 1 space, then 2 spaces, and 3 spaces in a row, then 4, then 5, and then so you have to put like all the tiles that you got into one row, and like it has to stay the same color. So sometimes you can, if you have to take too many tiles, or like tiles of a color that you can't take, you end up getting negative points because they have to go in your negative point row. And so there's a lot of taking things that other people need, or like taking things and making other people take bad things to get negative points. So that's a lot of fun, and it's really pretty. Next is Not Alone, which is a 1 versus mini game. I don't remember the exact theme, but there's an alien, and then you're on the planet trying to get away before you like assimilate into the planet, and the alien is trying to make you assimilate or something. But the way it works is you each have a deck of cards. You all have the same that start out with, and each card is a different location and a different number, 1 through 5. And so you secretly pick one. You all simultaneously secretly pick one, and that's like where you're going, and each one has a different power. And later on, you can get more locations, like, because one of the powers is getting new locations. But the alien can also be putting their markers on locations and like hunting those locations, or like being at those locations. And if the alien is at the location that you picked, then that's bad. They catch you and their marker goes up on the track and they're closer to winning. So it can get very tense, like trying to pick which locations to go to. And then also after you've played cards, they stay down until you play the card that brings them back. So the alien can see which cards you have gone to and which ones you have left in your hand, and use that to go to different locations and try to catch the most people, because everyone's doing this and everyone has the different locations. So it's hard to have it so that the alien doesn't catch anyone. But our game was super close. I think we were like 1 away from winning, and then the alien just barely caught the person and had barely made it to their win. So it was super close. Next is another word party game, Clover. So this is a cooperative word party game where there's a clover shape. Well, it's really just a 2x2 grid, but there's going to be word cards that each have 4 words on them on the outsides, and you have it like in little clover grid, so that it ends up being 2 words on each edge of the grid. And then you're trying to give 1-word clues on each edge of the grid to show those 2 words. And then all of their cards are going to get mixed up with a bonus card that you don't know. And then everyone's going to have to guess which cards were in the grid and what orientation. So you want to make good clues so that people can figure out how it goes. And sometimes the bonus card that gets added in works really well with some of the clues, and then people guess it totally wrong. So it's another one of those, if you like cooperative word games, then So Clover is another good one. Next is TransAmerica, which is a train game. It's really easy to learn. Basically, all you're doing on your turn is you're laying 1 or 2 tracks on the map, and the tracks are all the same. Like, you have your little token that starts, but when it connects to someone else's track, then you can use their track. So eventually, like, all the track becomes one. But you each start with 5 cities in your hand that are across America, and your goal is to connect all 5 of those cities. So when someone's connected all 5 of their cities, then that round ends, and you get negative points for how many spaces left you had to go to connect all your 5 cities. So TransAmerica is super simple to learn, but it also has that shared incentive. You're trying to get other people to build the routes for you and kind of like do all of the hard work, and then you just tack on at the end. So that's always a lot of fun. Next is Pictomania, which is a drawing and guessing game. So it's a free-for-all drawing and guessing game. Each round there's 3 cards of words up, like with numbers 1 through 7, and each person gets a number and a letter so they know what their card is. But the numbers don't repeat. So you're going to be drawing one of the words, but everyone else is drawing a different word, and you're trying to guess what they're drawing while you're drawing as well. And so you try to guess by putting down the numbers of their drawing. So like which row it is, and then you want to do that fast, because if you guess their drawing right first, then you get the most points. So you want to do that for everyone, but then you also want to get everyone to guess your drawing, because if people don't guess your drawing, you get negative points. And then also, if you finish first, then you get this big point value from the middle. So you want to draw and guess quickly, but you don't want to guess wrong, because if you guess wrong the most, then that point value that you got for being fast is negative. So there's a lot going on, and it's very hectic, a drawing and guessing game. And we played with a lot of the hard words. There's the different difficulties of words, and the hard ones are just like so hard to draw. It gets kind of absurd. Next is Kobayakawa, which is another Oink game. Well, I think it's also published by Yellow, but we have the Oink Games version. It's a poker type game, a bluffing game. There's a deck of cards that go from 1 to 15, I think, and you're trying to get the highest value at the end, but there's only like 1 round. So on your turn, you either draw a card and then discard a card. You start with 1 card, or there's a card face up in the middle, you can replace that card. So that's all you do on your turn. And the card in the middle, at the end, everyone who stays in, so you bet 1 or you fold, and everyone who stays in reveals, and the lowest number of the person who stayed in gets to add that number to the card in the middle. So if the card in the middle is high, then you kind of want to have the lowest number in order to have the highest overall score. So it's super simple, and I don't really like bluffing games, but like this one I like probably because it's simple and you don't really have to raise or anything. You just stay in or go out. All right, next is a set of 4 games that I played on Tabletop Simulator. I streamed it. Pantheon, Hextremadura, Q Memory, and ISO, which are from the 18 Hex Games Collection, which I think are currently on Kickstarter. But I stream them, so you can check that out if you're interested. But they're all different types of games. They're all 18 hexes in the game, so hexagonal tiles. Pantheon is a 2-player abstract game. Like, the tiles are double-sided gods, Greek and Roman gods, and they have different powers and different point values. It kind of reminded me of Othello, because you're like trying to get it to your side to get the points. But it's a lot more complicated than Othello, because there's different powers, and every time you place is a different special power. So that's Pantheon. And then Hextremadura was a cooperative tiling game where you're trying to build out a map. Each tile has like different regions on it, and you're trying to like match up the regions well to get a lot of points. And then Q Memory is a memory game, but like more complicated than memory. You're trying to remember everything in order. When you get a pair, you don't remove it. And the pairs, each tile is different. There's like the background color, and then there's a dot on it that's black or white. So you have to match either the white dot or the black dot or the background color, and then you go to the next one and then go to the next one. So it's kind of like going in order, and you have to get the whole board in one go. So it's a complex memory. And then ISO is my favorite of them. It's a competitive puzzle-y game, but you're trying to match patterns by placing these tiles. But the tiles are like optical illusion cubes, and so like you can either be viewing the outside or the inside of them, and you're trying to match the pattern in one view of the 3D plane that you're making. So it's very Escher-like, because like, oh, it's the outside of this block, but then the inside of this block, and it makes this pattern. And it gets very confusing, but I really like those like spatial games. So I liked that one a lot. So yeah, that was the 18 Hex Games Collection. That's also, there's a VOD of that if you want to watch me play those games. And then the last game is my very first game's Building Site, which is another toddler game that I also have a video about. But it's a memory game where you're trying to help build a house. So you have 8 different pieces and there's 2 of each color. And so you're trying to get the 2 gray ones first. And then once you get that, you can put the foundation down. And there's this cool dump truck that's a super fun toy factor. So my kids really like that. But we did manage to play it by the rules once this month, I guess. So that was it for the games I played this month. Hopefully that wasn't too long. And let me know if the order of that was okay. I think it ends up being most played to least played. And then for the ties of plays, it ended up being alphabetical. I think that's how it ranks it in BG Stats. But if you'd like it just to be all alphabetical or some other order, maybe like recent or like the date played, I don't know, let me know. But yeah, I actually played quite a few games this month. And part of that was because we had like, I think a couple of weekend game nights maybe, and also because my cousin was in town and we played some games with him on days that I usually don't play games. So that was a lot of fun. Anyway, thanks for sticking around. Like the video if you liked it, I guess, and subscribe. And if you want to watch more videos now, then check this one out because YouTube recommends this to you. It thinks you'll like this one. So yeah, thanks for watching Board Game Blitz. Bye!